Today we're exploring something really fascinating, the extended family structure of the Bayankole people in Uganda. And we're not just doing a broad overview. We're zeroing in on one specific group, one that's absolutely foundational, I think, but often gets missed in, Western studies.
Right.
The aunts. There's so much more than just relatives. They're like cultural pillars, key figures in a child's life, emotionally, even politically sometimes.
That's a really crucial point. The Bayankole kinship system, it's all built around clans, this idea of the broad family.
Right.
So our goal here really is to give you a shortcut to understanding how this works. We want to explore how the aunt's role is, formally set up, what they actually do, mentorship, passing on culture, and maybe the biggest question.
Yeah.
How is this really powerful, centuries-old influence holding up today, with all the changes, urbanization, globalization?
Okay, let's unpack that idea of authority straight away. If you got the immediate parents at the core, where does the aunt fit? What gives her this historical weight that seems to go beyond just being a loving relative?
Well, fundamentally, the aunt is seen as this vital bridge, not just between people, but between generations.
The bridge, okay.
And crucially, between different family lines, different lineages. And this is where we really need to get into that subtle but important distinction the sources make.
You mean maternal versus paternal?
Exactly, the difference between the paternal aunt and the maternal aunt.
I did notice the sources seem to place a lot of historical weight on the maternal side. Can you maybe define those roles a bit more for us?
Absolutely. So the maternal aunt, she's often called the Shingazi or Mukozi. She frequently holds this unique, almost ceremonial kind of authority.
It's ceremonial. How so?
Well, think about it. In a patrilineal society like the Bayankole, where kids belong to the father's lineage, the maternal aunt represents the mother's family. She's kind of an outsider to the father's clan structure. And that status, it often makes her a neutral party.
Okay. So she can step in during disputes.
Precisely. She's seen as a trusted voice who can intervene without being accused of, favoring the husband's side. A neutral arbitrator, basically. It's a built-in mechanism for conflict resolution.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So how does that compare to the paternal aunt, the Nainarum?
She's different. The paternal aunt, she's fully part of the father's kinship group. So she's usually more involved in the, let's say, the day-to-day discipline, reinforcing what the immediate family expects.
So both are involved in raising the kids, like co-parents.
Yes, both are definitely co-parents and mentors. But the maternal aunt often carries more weight, especially in really serious emotional situations or marriage problems, because she represents this separate, respected entity.
That structural role, the co-parenting, it's really interesting. They share the discipline load, but the sources also say they're seen as a safe space. How does that work? How can they give advice and support without undermining the parent's authority?
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. The sources suggest it comes down to consistent but nuanced interaction.
Nuanced how?
Well, the parents might set the main rules, right? But the aunt, especially the maternal one, she's often the one who interprets cultural values, applies them in specific situations.
Okay.
They become confidants, partly because their advice doesn't usually come with that immediate threat of parental punishment,
Right, lower stakes maybe.
Kind of. Yeah. They're the go-to for teaching emotional intelligence, cultural no-nos, values, practical life skills, maybe traditional crafts or specific knowledge, but often in a gentler way. More through stories, maybe.
So it sounds like they act as a sort of psychological buffer, especially during those tricky teenage years.
Exactly.
Giving advice about puberty or relationships, stuff kids might feel awkward asking parents about directly.
That's the beauty of the system, really. Young people often seek out the aunts because they offer perspective, not just commands. It allows for thinking things through, but still within that cultural framework.
How so?
An aunt might say, look, your parents have a point. They worry because of this reason. But then she adds the nuance, like, but let me tell you how a similar situation played out for someone in our clan years ago. It connects the personal issue to the bigger picture, the collective history.
That makes sense. Okay, let's pivot a bit to their more institutionalized authority. This isn't just informal chats. The sources really stress the aunt's role as a kind of social architect, especially around marriage and forming new families.
Yes, this is where their influence really solidifies. Aunts are deeply, deeply involved in socializing young people for adult life and particularly marriage. They're not just giving friendly advice, they're active players in the whole process.
Active players?
Yeah.
What kind of specific duties are we talking about? Matchmaking, I guess.
Matchmaking, yes, definitely. But also really crucial economic and social roles. Absolutely. The aunts are often the first line of vetting for a potential partner and their family background. And when it gets serious, they are central figures in the Okushaba, the dowry negotiations.
Wow. Okay.
Their opinion carries huge weight because they're seen as guardians of the family's honor and, frankly, its financial well-being. If a key aunt disapproves, well, that relationship could face some serious social roadblocks.
So their authority is directly linked to managing wealth transfer and ensuring stability for the next generation. That really does institutionalize the role, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And through all this, they're shaping gender roles, expectations, preparing young women especially for the huge responsibilities of marriage and motherhood in that context. And this guidance often continues formally through rites of passage.
Tell us a bit more about their role in initiation rites.
Well, whether it's a very formal ceremony or more informal teaching, the aunt often guides her niece through that transition into womanhood.
What does that involve?
Teaching specific etiquette, the traditions expected in the husband's clan, the deep cultural knowledge needed to integrate successfully into a new family. It's like an intensive cultural boot camp, and the aunt is the main instructor.
And this connects right back to what you said earlier about them being keepers of memory, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Why is the marriage facilitator often the same person responsible for cultural preservation?
Because marriage is seen as a key way culture gets passed down.
Right.
The aunt teaches the traditions, the stories, the folklore, specific skills like songs, dances, maybe even knowledge of traditional medicine. All of it has to be transmitted to keep the lineage's identity alive.
Makes sense.
Think about it. When a child is born, who makes sure the naming ceremony follows all the intricate details, honoring the right ancestors?
The aunts.
Often, yes. And who oversees the proper funeral rites, the mourning protocols? Again, the aunts. They are like the living, breathing archives of Bayankole heritage.
It really makes you appreciate how some cultures view family not just for raising kids, but as this collective investment in memory and history.
And what's really interesting there is if you rely on memory and personal transmission like that, then anything that threatens the aunt's physical presence...
As the archive itself.
Exactly. A threat to proximity is a threat to the culture.
That is the perfect segue. Because that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
What does all this cultural weight, this accumulated authority, mean for aunts living today in the 21st century? How are things like modernization, moving to cities, global influences impacting these really profound, essential roles?
Yeah, that's the core challenge right now. The sources definitely confirm that these traditional extended family roles are changing, no question.
How so, primarily?
Well, urbanization is a big one. Young people moving away for jobs, for education, often hundreds of miles away from that traditional broad family unit.
Right, the geographical distance.
That distance is probably the most immediate challenge. It just erodes that constant presence, that daily direct influence that really defined the aunt's traditional role.
So the knowledge doesn't just vanish, but the way it's delivered, that constant interaction, is disrupted.
Precisely. You know, if you're living in Kampala, far from your home village, your mother's sister can't just easily pop over to help sort out a disagreement or, demonstrate how a specific funeral rite is done. It definitely puts pressure on those traditional spiritual and cultural guidance rules.
But it sounds like the influence hasn't just disappeared. It's shifting, adapting maybe.
Yeah.
The sources talk about a powerful contemporary identity emerging.
Yes, definitely adapting. We're seeing this really sophisticated balancing act.
Balancing what?
Well, you have aunts today who are often highly educated. They're professionals, teachers, nurses, entrepreneurs, you name it. And they're juggling these demanding professional lives with those deeply ingrained traditional family roles. They sort of become cultural translators.
Cultural translators. Interesting. So they're taking the authority they inherited from tradition, that deep community trust, and using it to tackle modern issues.
That seems to be the key mechanism for modern influence, yes. What's really fascinating is how the educated aunt is now often a powerful advocate within the community.
An advocate for what?
Using her cultural standing, her capital, you could say, to push for things like women's rights, better access to education, youth empowerment programs. She can go talk to a traditional elder about why girls need schooling, for instance, and she gets listened to. Why?
Yeah.
Because she's still seen as this trustworthy guardian of cultural values, even while she's pushing for what might seem like progressive change.
So she's bridging the gap.
Exactly. Bridging the past and the present, using that inherited role, that respect, to speak truth to both tradition and modernity. It's quite remarkable.
It really is. This whole deep dive shows the Bayankole aunt isn't just a relative in the Western sense. She's this enduring, really dynamic figure, mentor, cultural guardian, and now a modern advocate whose authority comes from real structural roots.
Absolutely. And I think it encourages us maybe to reflect on the value of having that kind of institutionalized non-parental authority in a society.
What do you mean?
Well, when a society relies almost solely on the nuclear family unit, maybe it loses something vital. That layer of community support, objective counsel, the cultural continuity that this Bayankole structure clearly provides, or at least aims to provide.
That's a powerful point. And that challenge, that evolution, leaves us with a really provocative thought to maybe mull over. If the aunt's traditional power was so tied to physical presence and proximity, being there to teach the specifics of marriage customs or naming rights or funeral protocols, how can the modern aunt, who might live hundreds of miles away, best use her inherited authority? How does she ensure that crucial cultural knowledge stays relevant, stays active as a guiding wisdom when navigating the challenges of today's much more spread out, globalized world?